from the Viking runes carved into Hagia Sophia by northern warriors serving Byzantine emperors to the wild cry "Awaken Iron" echoing through the Catalan mountains and the 147 Swiss guards massacred on the steps of St. Peter's defending the Pope. These are the 12 historic special forces of Europe. The Varangian Guard. Between the 10th and 14th centuries, the Varangian Guard was the elite unit of the Byzantine Empire. Formed by Scandinavian warriors and exiled Anglo-Saxons, they served as personal bodyguards to the emperors in Constantinople. Wielding massive two-handed axes, they wore heavy armour and round Viking shields. They favoured brutal close combat, carving their way through enemies with devastating axe strikes. Famous for their fierce loyalty, being foreigners with no local ties, they never conspired against the emperor. Harald Hardrada of Norway served as a Varangian, accumulating wealth and fame before claiming his throne. In battle, they were feared for their imposing stature and willingness to fight to the last man for the emperor's life. But they left literal marks of their passage. In Hagia Sophia in Constantinople, a Varangian warrior carved runes into the galleries reading, "Halfdan was here," 1,000-year-old Viking graffiti. The Almogavars. Between the 13th and 14th centuries, the Almogavars were elite mercenaries of the Crown of Aragon. Formed by shepherds and mountain men, hardened in the Reconquista, they operated as specialist light infantry in irregular warfare. They fought without armour to gain agility, armed with short spears, throwing javelins and machetes. Before battle, they struck weapons against stones, shouting, "Desperta ferro," awaken iron, striking sparks to terrorise the enemy. They gained fame as the most feared infantry of their era. In Asia Minor, 6,500 Almogavars massacred an army of 13,000 Turks. A year later, 7,000 of them defeated 40,000 enemies at the Battle of Mount Taurus. They took no prisoners, captured enemies, even children over 10 years old were summarily eliminated. They wore rough clothing and animal skins with a mystical fighting style. They emerged from the hills like wolves, unarmoured, torsos covered in leather and soot, eyes burning with fury. The Gallowglass. Between the 13th and 16th centuries, the Gallowglass were Norse Gaelic mercenaries from Scotland who served Irish chieftains. They operated as elite heavy infantry and bodyguards against Norman and English invaders. They were tall, robust warriors described as men of great and powerful bodies, cruel and without compassion. They fought on foot, preferring death to retreat. They wielded enormous two-handed axes, capable of splitting knights and their horses with a single blow. They wore chainmail over padded gambesons and iron helmets. Each Gallowglass was accompanied by 2 assistants. One carried additional weapons, the other provisions, ensuring they were always ready for combat. Contemporary chroniclers noted that the strength of battle lies with them, and they preferred death to surrender. But they were so valuable, they served as marriage dowries. In 1259, they were introduced to Ireland when 160 warriors were offered to an Irish king. In 1569, an Irish leader received 1,200 Gallowglass as dowry, highlighting their strategic value. They were decisive in several Gaelic victories against superior forces until the advent of firearms. The Knights Hospitaller. Between the 11th and 16th centuries, the Knights Hospitaller were a military religious order founded in Jerusalem. Originally caring for the sick, they evolved into warrior monks who defended pilgrims and fought Muslim invaders. After the Crusades, they established themselves in Rhodes and later Malta, becoming Christianity's front line in the Mediterranean. They specialised in fortress defence and naval corsair attacks against Ottoman ships. In 1565, during the Great Siege of Malta, about 500 knights and 5,000 Maltese militia resisted for 4 months against an Ottoman army of over 30,000 men. The Hospitallers fought to exhaustion, repelling wave after wave of assaults. They used heavy armour, longswords, lances, crossbows and artillery in fortifications. But when the Turks captured a fort and executed all defenders, floating their crucified bodies in the bay, Grand Master John de Valette took revenge by beheading Ottoman prisoners and bombarding the enemy camp with the captives' heads. This fierce determination made the Ottomans retreat. The victory at Malta entered history as a turning point, frustrating Turkish expansion into Europe. The Swiss Guard. Since 1506, the Swiss Guard has been the defence force of the Pope and Vatican. Created by Pope Julius II, it's the world's oldest active military corps. 519 years of uninterrupted service. Recruited exclusively from Swiss Catholic men of minimum height, 1.74 metres, they swear an oath of absolute fidelity to the Pope. Traditionally armed with halberds and swords, today they also train with modern firearms. Their moment of glory and tragedy occurred during the sack of Rome on May 6, 1527. On that date, 189 Swiss guards faced an army of 20,000 mercenaries invading Rome. In a suicidal stand on the steps of St. Peter's Basilica, 147 soldiers died defending Pope Clement VII. Thanks to their sacrifice, the Pope escaped through a secret corridor to Castel Sant'Angelo. Only 42 guards survived, escorting Clement in his flight. But this act of bravery engraved itself in the church's memory. To this day, every year recruits are sworn in on May 6th in tribute to those who fell in 1527. Their proverbial loyalty inspired other European armies to hire Swiss as elite mercenaries in following centuries. The Polish winged Hussars. Between the 16th and 18th centuries, the winged Hussars were Poland's elite heavy cavalry, considered one of history's most effective shock forces. Armed with hollow lances up to 6 meters long, an innovation making them light yet strong, plus curved sabres, long thrusting swords, pistols and maces. They wore gleaming cuirasses and helmets, with 2 wings on their backs, rows of feathers attached to wooden frames. The wings gave them an intimidating angel of death appearance, and produced a terrifying noise while galloping, frightening enemy horses. At Kirchholm in 1605, 3,000 Polish hussars annihilated a Swedish army of 11,000 men in just 30 minutes, one of the most complete victories ever recorded. At Kruszyn in 1610, facing Russians and Swedes at a 5-to-1 disadvantage, the Hussars charged repeatedly until they destroyed the enemy. But their most famous feat was at the Siege of Vienna in 1683. 3,000 winged Hussars, led by King Jan Sobieski, formed the vanguard of history's largest cavalry charge. 18,000 Allied horsemen, and shattered the Ottoman lines, saving Vienna. For nearly 2 centuries, no formation could withstand a hussar charge, the French Foreign Legion. Since 1831, the Foreign Legion has been an elite military force composed mostly of foreign volunteers. It was the spearhead of French colonial expansion in the 19th century, and still today operates in the most difficult and remote missions. Their motto, Legio Patria Nostra, the Legion is our homeland, reflects that for legionaries, often men with troubled pasts seeking a fresh start, the Legion becomes family and nation. Versatile infantry, capable of fighting in deserts, jungles or mountains. They became known for their unbreakable esprit de corps and willingness to march or die. At Camarone, Mexico, in 1863, 65 legionaries resisted for 10 hours against about 2,000 Mexican soldiers, fighting to the last bullet and last man. Surrounded, they refused to surrender and charged with bayonets in a desperate final confrontation. Only 3 remaining survivors laid down arms with honour. The Legion cultivated the maxim, the Legion dies but does not surrender. To this day, it's the most decorated unit of the French armed forces. The Arditi. Between 1917 and 1920, the Arditi, the name means the daring ones, were elite assault troops of the Royal Italian Army, created to break the stalemate of trench warfare. Pioneers of infiltration warfare, they operated in small, agile groups, exploiting terrain and darkness to penetrate enemy trenches before a general attack. Trained in hand-to-hand combat, use of explosives and climbing, armed primarily with hand grenades and daggers to avoid overloading and facilitate fighting in narrow trenches. Many carried pistols, short-barreled shotguns, light machine guns, or flamethrowers. They wore dark uniforms with the Black Flames insignia, Fiamme Nere. They bore an emblem of a skull biting a dagger, a symbol of sudden death. They didn't wear heavy helmets, but a side-flap cap or black fez. But their motto was audacious, O la vittoria, o tutti accopati, either victory or all dead. In 1918, they participated in the decisive Vittorio Veneto offensive breaking Austrian lines. They became famous for taking enemy trenches in minutes with grenades and blades where conventional attacks failed. The Brandenburgers. Between 1939 and 1944, the Brandenburgers were special reconnaissance, sabotage and infiltration units of Nazi Germany, linked to the Abwehr military intelligence service. Masters at passing as enemy troops or locals, they spoke multiple languages and knew foreign cultures intimately. They infiltrated wearing enemy uniforms or civilian clothes, approached bridges, bunkers and depots as allies, then attacked from within. They operated in small, highly trained groups equipped with explosives, light machine guns and captured weapons to avoid arousing suspicion. In 1940, during the invasion of Holland, 9 Brandenburg Commandos pretending to escort German prisoners and wearing Dutch uniforms captured the vital Gennep Bridge by surprise. On the eve of Operation Barbarossa in 1941, they stealthily crossed the Soviet border, dressed as civilians and Red Army troops, sabotaging communications and taking bridges before German divisions arrived. But they were so efficient, their motto was, "See everything, remain unseen." At Maikop in 1942, a detachment penetrated the oil city, disguised as Soviet police, and managed to capture it through cunning. They normally completed missions of weeks behind enemy lines with minimal casualties. Due to the unconventional nature of their methods, the unit was dissolved in 1944, the Special Air Service, SAS. Since 1941, the SAS has been the United Kingdom's pioneering modern special forces unit. Founded by Major David Sterling in North Africa during World War II, it was designed for commando operations, long-range reconnaissance, sabotage, and counter-terrorism. In World War II, they conducted commando raids behind Axis lines in the desert, using armed jeeps and nocturnal surprise to destroy aircraft and enemy depots. They attacked isolated airfields, sabotaging over 400 Nazi and Italian aircraft on the ground, and disappeared into the dunes before dawn. They operated in small groups of 4 highly trained men, each a specialist in explosives, shooting, navigation, and first aid. They adopted the bold motto, "Who dares wins," and the winged dagger emblem, famous for the extremely high physical and mental demands of their selection. But the SAS gained worldwide fame in 1980 during the Iranian embassy incident in London. 6 terrorists held 26 hostages. In 17 minutes, SAS operators stormed the building live on TV, killing 5 captors and rescuing all survivors with surgical precision and impressive coolness. Sterling, their founder, was considered an undisciplined playboy, but proved that a handful of well-trained men could cause more damage than entire battalions. The Spetsnaz. Since the 1950s, Spetsnaz has meant Soviet and Russian special forces, tasked with long-range reconnaissance operations, strategic sabotage, and counter-terrorism. Known for the extreme toughness of their physical and psychological training, Spetsnaz soldiers conduct exhausting marches, martial arts, and exercises with live ammunition. They learn to handle all types of weapons and survive with scarce means. There are reports of exercises where they're dropped in frozen forests with just a knife and flint. A seminal episode was Operation Storm 333 in Kabul 1979. On December 27th, about 700 Spetsnaz assaulted the Taj Beg Palace, the fortified residence of the Afghan president, defended by nearly 2,000 heavily armed guards. In a lightning operation of just 43 minutes, Soviet commandos crossed the road under heavy fire, invaded the palace, and eliminated practically the entire palace guard with only 20 of their own casualties. But Spetsnaz folklore includes almost superhuman feats, like breaking bricks with bare hands, swimming kilometers in ice water, or shooting accurately after spinning on a trampoline. They cultivate the image of lethal and unpredictable super soldiers. At Beslan in 2004, several officers sacrificed themselves covering explosives with their own bodies to save children. In the Crimea annexation of 2014, they appeared as mysterious little green men, troops without insignia who took strategic points without firing a shot. Unofficial motto, "Nothing stops us." We do the impossible. Miracles take a little longer. The Portuguese Commandos. Since 1962, the Portuguese Commandos are the special forces, the Portuguese army, created during the colonial war in Africa, designed for counter-guerrilla operations and long-range patrols in the jungles and savannas of Angola, Mozambique, and Guinea. They operated in small autonomous groups, tracking insurgents, ambushing camps, and executing high-mobility shock actions. The Commando Course became legendary for its toughness. 90-kilometer forced marches, isolated survival, and resisting simulated torture. The maxim preached was, the commando's main weapon is his own will. Armed with G3 rifles, machetes, and grenades, they were known for expending more ammunition in close combat, ensuring fire superiority. In combat, they painted their faces black and red, emerging from the jungle like demons. There was a controversial ritual. Drinking the blood of the first enemy, killed as a ritual of cohesion and defiance of fear. Guerrillas fled terrified before the countercharge of the Red Berets. They emerged from the forest, and within minutes the clearing was taken by silence, none of their own missing from roll call. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See what's next. From 10,000 warriors who never died in ancient Persia, to the severed head of Cyrus the Great drowned in blood by a vengeful queen, and the Chinese general who buried 400,000 prisoners alive. These are the 12 legendary warriors and military units of Asia.